If there was ever a perfect time to switch from an iPhone to Team Android, now would be it. Because for the first time ever, it feels like Samsung has released the perfect smartphone in every which way possible. My name is RJ, and I just switched from the iPhone 14 Pro Max to the brand new Samsung Galaxy S23 Ultra. And if you feel like you're on the verge of switching over to Team Android, then this video is for you. Despite only spending the past 72 hours with the S23 Ultra, I feel like this phone is the epitome of the perfect smartphone. Although on the exterior, this phone may look very much like last year's S22 Ultra, it's internally where this phone comes together to give us the users an experience like none other. All of the complaints I had with the S22 Ultra have now been addressed on this phone, and I mean all of them. The videography at nighttime is a lot better. We finally get true 8K video that looks incredible. The camera so far has been a consistent shooter with next to no shutter lag. I haven't noticed any heating issues thus far. The battery life is significantly better. The speakers have considerably improved, and OneUI 5.1 is very well polished on this phone. Yeah, it seems like this phone is the real deal. You see, I was lucky enough to pre-order the S23 Ultra. With my pre-order, I was able to get the 512GB variant of the S23 Ultra for the exact same price as the 128GB variant. Here in Canada, after taxes, this phone goes for a whopping $1,864. By no means is it cheap. But when you take a look at this phone from a value proposition standpoint, this phone delivers. I would say more so than the iPhone 14 Pro Max. Don't get me wrong, the iPhone 14 Pro Max is a solid phone. Sure, it may be buggier than before, and it does have worse battery life than its predecessor, the iPhone 13 Pro Max. But overall, it's a solid phone. However, I do find it to be ridiculously boring, and I needed an incentive to escape the daunting Apple ecosystem. I present to you the incentive, the S23 Ultra. I picked up this phone in the Phantom Black colorway, hands down one of my favorite colors of all time. I was rather intrigued by that graphite colorway, but shipping times for Samsung exclusives got pushed back till the end of March, and there is no way I'm going to be waiting that long to get away from my iPhone. In the hands, the S23 Ultra feels premium. It's got some good weight to it, giving you that feeling that you are holding something expensive. It's about 6 grams heavier than the iPhone 14 Pro Max, which is of course a negligible amount. Although I will say that the S23 Ultra is a much more comfortable phone to grasp, thanks to the boxy corners and the slimmer overall profile. This year, the display is a bit flatter than what we got on the S22 Ultra, and as a pretty avid S Pen user, this is a much welcome change. Unlike a lot of people I know, I use the S Pen every chance I get. I use it to write down all of my important thoughts. I use it to write down all of my notes while I'm in a team meeting, and on occasion I use it as a remote to record videos and take selfies every now and then. So writing on a flatter display this year makes the writing experience all the more natural and, more importantly, more enjoyable. This goes back to what the iPhone is missing. Sure, Steve Jobs wasn't a big fan of the stylus, but having the option to utilize a pen on a smartphone makes the S23 Ultra all the more versatile, especially when you compare it to a phone like the iPhone 14 Pro Max. When comparing both displays, the iPhone 14 Pro Max and the S23 Ultra are fantastic. Vivid colors, bright contrast, and dialed-up saturation make the S23 Ultra an incredible phone to interact with. When comparing both these displays, I really can't say which one I prefer. Both are OLED 120Hz LTPO panels. Both are great for watching content on, and both do get plenty bright. The iPhone 14 Pro Max does peak at a max brightness of 2000 nits compared to the S23 Ultra that peaks at a max brightness of 1750 nits, which once again is a negligible amount. But for some reason on the S23 Ultra, I can feel the speed of 120Hz when scrolling on the phone. Whereas on the iPhone, I know that the phone is running 120Hz, but it doesn't feel like it for some odd reason. The S23 Ultra, however, is the taller phone, so reaching the top end of the phone does strain my fingers. But it's not too often that I ever need to reach the top of my phone, thanks to OneUI gestures. More on OneUI a little bit later in the video. What I would highly recommend though is that you do pick up a screen protector ASAP. The S23 Ultra uses Gorilla Glass Victus 2, which is for some reason not scratch resistant. A lot of owners are already claiming that they picked up micro abrasions on their phone while just keeping their phones in their pockets. So a screen protector is a must on this phone, and I'll drop a link for you guys to a few that I do recommend below. So speaking of OneUI, let me be the first to tell you that Samsung has come a long way since the TouchWiz days. This phone absolutely flies. I really can't pinpoint what Samsung did exactly, but they seem to have completely overhauled their software experience. Thanks to the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 chipset, 12GB of RAM, and running OneUI 5.1, this phone absolutely flies. In fact, I would go as far as saying this phone is now more smooth and more fluid than the Pixel 7 Pro, which is essentially running a stock version of Android. So major props to Samsung. Animations, opening and closing apps, multitasking between apps, everything just feels so well refined on this phone. It sort of does remind me of iOS, and that's just a testament to how far Samsung's come in a short amount of time. Something that I've come to learn with time is that iPhones are vastly superior to Androids when it comes to heat dissipation. Especially if you live in a hot climate like India, you need a phone that's going to have good thermal management. And with the S23 Ultra, I'm happy to report that the cooling on this phone is terrific. I actually tested this myself by running one of my favorite games, League of Legends Wild Rift, for 3 straight hours. And after 3 hours, no overheating, the back of the phone doesn't get remotely hot to the touch, and I didn't notice any drop frames. So this could be the first Android flagship that I've tested anyways to come with an excellent thermal cooling system. Before we get into the battery life, if you guys want to see more content on the S23 Ultra, then do me a huge favor and drop a like on this video and subscribe to the channel. Now that I switched over to the S23 Ultra, this will be my daily driver from here on out. So I'll be covering this phone extensively and sharing with you guys my thoughts on this phone and my experience in the upcoming weeks. With the S23 Ultra, I did not expect the battery to improve this much. I mean, sure, I knew that the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 chipset is a more efficient chipset, but I did not, for the life of me, expect stellar battery life that is comparable to the iPhone 14 Pro Max. It's still early on, but these past few days, the battery life has been on point. And if you guys watch my reviews on a consistent basis, then you already know that I run these phones on nothing but a 5G network. So the average user who swaps back and forth between LTE and Wi-Fi will experience much better battery life than what I'm currently experiencing. Even during that 3-hour session of League of Legends Wild Rift, the battery life only dropped by 13%, which is actually equivalent to what I would have expected on the iPhone 14 Pro Max. It's still early on, but we may be looking at a new battery king that belongs to an Android. A lot of people were complaining that the charging speed on this phone is too slow, charging at a speed of 45 watts. Well, I think a lot of you guys are actually spoiled. I'm coming to this phone from an iPhone, which at max speeds can only reach 25 watts. I think we need to also recognize that a faster charger does also degrade battery health over time. And you want to buy a phone that provides you with longevity, so I think Samsung made the right move going with a 45 watt charger. The biggest change to this phone, hands down, is the main camera lens. A 200 megapixel shooter that crops images by 16 times to deliver a 12 megapixel bin shot. I initially wrote this off as a gimmick, but boy oh boy was I ever wrong. The images that come out of this phone are actually really good. The sheer versatility of this camera system is unlike any other smartphone. The sensor is pretty reliable, the images that come out of this phone are stunning, and I personally prefer it over what the iPhone 14 Pro Max is able to deliver. I won't get into the cameras too much in this video, it's still pretty early on for me, but I will say stay tuned for my review because once I get accustomed to this camera system and I learn a bit more about it, I'll talk about it in my upcoming review. One key feature from my iPhone that I will most definitely miss is MagSafe. MagSafe is actually so useful, and I have a plethora of MagSafe accessories all around the home and in my car. Luckily, Mous sent over some cases that I'm currently loving. These are Mous cases for the S23 Ultra that come with MagSafe built in, so I can continue to use all of my MagSafe accessories, including a MagSafe battery bank. Just like that. This particular case features AeroShock technology that provides impact protection and solid camera bump protection. S23 Mous cases feature a sleek design with a range of refined backplates and a microfiber lining to protect the back of your S23 Ultra. We have good accessibility to all the ports and more importantly the S Pen. Aside from the MagSafe, my second favorite feature on this case is the rippled grip ribs for additional grip. If you guys want to check out some S23 Ultra Mous cases, link is in the description below. If you made it till the end of this video, drop a dolphin emoji down in the comments below so I know exactly who my true supporters are. And if you're planning on switching over to the S23 Ultra from an iPhone, then drop a peach emoji down in the comments below. As always, thank you so much for watching and don't forget to flex with your tech.